So we appreciate you tuning in. Today we have a special guest, Danny Lundy. He's my campaign manager, but he also is running his own race, and I will let him tell you a little bit about that.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on. My name's Danny Lundy. I'm chair of the Libertarian Party of Morgan County, two-time County Affiliate of the Year, and I'm also running for Mooresville Town Council in 2023. So I'm actually have started a little bit early, as everyone should if they intend to run a decent race.
Awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about fiscal sanity today and accountability. Danny, which topic should we pick first?
I can tell you the story. In Mooresville, the story that I had. I went to a local redevelopment commission meeting, and by the way, if you're not keeping tabs on your local redevelopment commission, you should. When we talk about fiscal insanity, redevelopment commissions tend to be that way. If you live in Hamilton County, I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. They built a hotel with marble floors and everything up there with taxpayer money. So you guys should be really paying attention. But I went to a redevelopment commission, and a taxpayer got up to ask a question, and the chair of the redevelopment commission literally said to this guy, "We don't have to take your questions. We don't have to answer them. We don't have to allow public comment." Literally extended his hand and said, "You may go now." I went home completely just like, what just happened and what can I do about it? Just as a citizen, not as a candidate, not as anything. Just, I was completely disenfranchised in that moment of this system is broken. So I resolved to just start recording the meetings. I mean, I was part of the Libertarian Party of Morgan County at the time. And we have a page, right? A Facebook page. So I just started showing up with my phone and live streaming the meeting so that the next time this guy told somebody that, there it is for the entire town to see. And it was surprising. At first, a lot of people were uncomfortable. I didn't get up and wag my finger and yell at them or anything. I just walked in with a camera and said, "Hey, I'm live streaming this," and just sort of let the chips fall where they may. And I started streaming my local township meeting. A lot of people don't know what goes on at their township government. And it was important for me that people understand that that's a layer of government a lot of people don't even think about. But they're spending your money just like everybody else. So I started streaming a lot of the meetings. And over time, I got to know some of the town council members because I'm showing up to all the meetings to stream them. And at first, they were very uncomfortable, but there was an immediate difference in the way they reacted with the public and the way they spoke. When they voted on something, they took a little bit more time to explain what it was, instead of just like, "We're voting on resolution 12, yes or no." And so that had an impact. And from their point of view, the feedback I started getting from them was the phone calls they get wasn't combating rumor. And in a small town, rumors run rampant. That's how that works, right? But they were starting to get phone calls about people who heard a rumor and they went and watched the video. So they had a much better understanding of what was actually happening. And they were calling whether they were angry or they liked the plan or whatever. At least it was informed feedback that the town council started to receive. So it became a positive for the local town council to be more transparent, as well as a positive for the community. So it was a win-win scenario. And in the end, Mooresville ended up buying a camera, and they have their own YouTube channel now, and they stream all their meetings so that the public can watch them. And it became a domino effect even. Another city down south, Martinsville, picked it up. They started streaming theirs to Facebook. Morgan County started streaming all their meetings to their own YouTube channel. So it was a small thing, in my opinion, to just show up and say, "Hey, the public needs to see what's happening here." And it created a much bigger thing where now if anybody has a question about anything that's going on in a lot of the major government entities in Morgan County, we can go watch that online. Now, I know, big cities like Indianapolis, maybe Evansville and places like that there to do these things, but a lot of people don't know how to find it. It's buried somewhere way down deep in their website. And so just making these things accessible. And I think when I ran for township office back in 2018, that's what I ran on, was transparency plus accessibility, people having access to that transparency equals accountability. And if you put those three things together, you have a much better, more efficient government.
Absolutely. And I really like what you said about it being a win-win. So accountability is not just a win for the taxpayer, but in this case, they're combating a lot less rumors, and it was actually a win for the elected officials. And a lot of libertarian solutions are just that. It's a win for the taxpayer. But what really blows my mind is that when you first went, what they told the taxpayer, right? And so we got to remember what when cities are spending our money, when the county's spending our money, when the state's spending our money, when the federal's spending our money, it is our money. That's the taxpayer money. So holding them accountable is absolutely essential. And when elected officials don't think they're accountable to that, it definitely puts a perspective on it.
Well, coming from someone that just recently started reading all of the stuff, when you're trying to figure out where your money went, I know we had something happen in Brownsburg and it was buried beneath. We spent like $40,000 on chairs for our government building. And it's like, why do I have to dig through a 180-page document to see that you spent $40,000 on office chairs?
Which
I
is
mean,
100% correct. I mean, the big news story today in our local paper was the $16 million gym for our high school, which they originally billed as like, hey, this is going to be a community center. It's going to be a wellness center for the whole community. And then eventually, well, no, we can't do after they got the bond approved, right? Then, well, we can't really do that, and blah, blah, blah. And now it's like can't remember the count. It's like the sixth gym I think we have for the high school now, because Indiana in basketball, we're going to have 7 or 8 gyms apparently per high school. And meanwhile, our teachers are like, hey, we're not paid enough. And what people don't know, I mean, in their defense, the budgets and some of the red tape that comes from the state on how they can build their budgets, this was literally like you're only allowed to have so much money for a construction bond. And their old construction bond had just ran out. So if they didn't issue a new one and build something right away, they would have like lost the state approval. So they came up with a project to issue another bond to go ahead and spend that money. And there's a lot of waste built into the system with the strings that are attached both from the federal government and the state government that trickles down to our state and local governments. Because, and I think I heard you talk about it at town hall the other day, James, when you give a school, $100,000, it costs them $120,000 to comply with the regulations that come with that $100,000, and it's ridiculous that we put so many strings and constraints on our local governments and our state governments and all these strings. And if you think of it like a marionette, right, like a bunch of puppets, eventually those strings get intertangled and twisted up, and it just becomes the mess we have today.
Right. And so you mentioned the town hall, but what I was mentioning there is on the federal level, your school gets about 6 to 8% of federal funding. But what ends up happening is they overregulate it, and your school has to spend more than it receives to even comply with all those regulations. So with the red tape, the federal level is literally doing nothing for your school. And how can we hold them more accountable? Physical sanity is what we termed up, and we have to realize that with all this red tape, we end up wasting more money than what's given back to our communities. So, Danny, fiscal sanity, what does that mean on the local level and for the race that you're running?
Oh man. So at the time I did the RDC thing, there was a huge project that everybody was upset about, but it was because the project was starting to get built. The truth is, it had been approved like 6 years earlier. And that's why I talk about a lot about like educating the voters, because they only see the end product and they don't realize that this happened 6 years ago and now it's too late, right? And it was a 12 million that they borrowed $12 million. When we say they issued a bond, that means they took out a loan, right? So you're paying $12 million plus interest, right, to do these things. And it was to build some monuments and a small park, and people were upset about it, and that's understandable, but I did my best to try to educate people on that. So when we talk about fiscal sanity on the local level, a lot of it comes back to education. I remember when I first became chair of Morgan County, I thought a really cool thing for us to do as libertarians would be to bring in like a professor or somebody, some sort of economics person, to teach us how municipal budgets work. Because they're so complicated, right? There's all these different line items and budgets, and this fund can only be used for these things. And again, that comes down to a lot of these strings we're talking about, right? We get this money from the state, but it can only be spent on X, Y, Z. right? So the townspeople see like, well, we got $10 million, just pay the cops for them, right? And it's, well, we can only pay them out of these two funds, right, for that's dedicated for those things. And it gets really complicated. And I was like, it'd be really cool to have somebody come in and we would pay them and we would get an event venue and we would invite the public to come learn how this is done. So what really surprised me was when I think it was 2 or 3 different professors from local colleges go, yeah, I don't know how that works either. If you put on that event, please send me an invite. I would like to know more. That's how complicated it is. That, like, our government and economic professors at the local college also don't know how it works. And it's convoluted on purpose, right? Because that keeps us as taxpayers in the dark. So the best thing I can do if I were to say win my race is try to educate the public on how these things work. One of the things I've been doing recently is simply taking the town budget and putting it into like a pie chart so people can see like, hey, this is our most expensive department and this is the second most expensive department. And where does our money really go? Because most people just don't know. And from my part, it takes me a couple hours to figure it out. Just, of research just to figure it out because it's that complicated. So when you get up to things like in the federal level, we have the Congressional Budget Office and the news reports what they say all the time. But what does that mean? They released a 180-page report today, and then some talking head on the news says, well, here's the 3 things we think are important. But maybe that's not what I think is important as a taxpayer. And in order for me to get the answer, I have to go read 180 pages of accounting, verbiage and try to make sense of their spreadsheets or whatever. It's insane. And it's really crazy.
Well, like I want to kind of call back to something we talked about last week is, getting the government up to the times. Like, why isn't it you spent a couple hours finding all this to do it local and create a pie chart and say, hey, here's where our money is. Why isn't that on all of our government websites where you can go it up and say right here, boom, here's the pie chart. Here's what shows. Here's where all your money's at. Here's who's spending the most. Click on that, and it takes you and gives you like a itemized thing. We spend on this, and this.
Well, and what I'd really like a pie chart on right now is because it's being talked about a lot right now, but the gas tax, and specifically in Indiana, it's a complicated process. So we could call on the Republicans to suspend that tax. As libertarians, we want to get rid of any tax that we can anyway. But if you actually do a pie chart on the gas tax, it doesn't go to just roads like they state it does. There's actually other organizations that take from it. And I believe the DCS is one of those that takes a large chunk of that. So when we talk about specifically the gas tax, I would love to see a pie chart of exactly where those funds are going because they advertise it as one thing. This is how we rebuild our roads, etc. But they're clearly taxing too much on it. And as well, I believe other organizations are taking big chunks of that tax.
Well, there was an article, what was it, last week, right? Or 2 weeks ago, maybe, that came out and said, hey, Indiana's got a massive surplus. They got way more than they expected from the gas tax. And I think it was Rob Kendall who pointed out, like, if you took just our surplus from this month, it would carry us the 3 months for summer of our anticipated income for that. And they're still not going to do anything about it, right? But so the gas tax gets me all fired up, so you have to excuse me. But it's 74 cents right now, right? Because
right, and 50
cents. Don't understand because there's a gas tax, and we have a Republican supermajority in Indiana that said, hey, we don't want to be bothered with having to look at these numbers every year. So we're just going to vote so that it goes up automatically on like July 1st every year. So, next month it'll be even more. Of course, there's the federal gas tax. And then there's the sales tax also applies to the gas. So you also have a sales tax on top of the gas tax, on top of the federal gas tax. And the last time I checked, and it took me some time to go find it again because it's buried so deep, like 85% of that goes into the general fund, which means they can spend it on whatever they want.
Right. So when we talk about road and transparency, we think the gas tax goes to roads, but really that's not the case. And in fact, if you look at a lot of our roads in Indiana, they have many potholes and aren't paved well anyway. So we definitely need a little bit more transparency on that. And on the state level, I think it's 54 cents. And then on the county or federal level, it's 20 some cents to equal a total of. Or
I think I looked it up like 2 weeks ago. Of course, the price of gas is fluctuating, therefore so is the tax because of the sales tax, right? But the last time I looked it up was like a week ago, and I did the math. It was like 74 cents a gallon.
Right. So I believe
that's including the 18 cents from the Fed.
yeah, it's 18 cents from the Fed, and then I think around 54-ish from the state. So every single gallon of gas that you use is being taxed ridiculously right now, and it's a good point to bring up. Other Republicans are doing absolutely nothing about it, and surprisingly, the Democrats are the ones that are often calling for this tax to be reduced. But even with that, they're looking to tax other things as well. So it's just like, what do we choose to tax? The Libertarian Party is the only party that wants to reduce taxes altogether.
Completely, and the regulation that comes with it. Like maybe we do fund education, but we stop, demanding these crazy tests, and we stop telling teachers how to teach in the classroom, and just say, okay, here's your money, right? I mean, maybe that's step one. I mean, we want to get the federal government out of education entirely. I get that, but sometimes step one is just saying like, hey, here's the money you need. Go do what you need with it. And just let them do that. And I feel like there's a lot of efficiency to be gained all the way down the line on the state and even on the local level to say, hey, we can use this money how we need to use it. Here's a good example of that. There was this weird thing that I kind of watched happen in between the RDC and the town council, right? And you gotta like watch all of that. It's like a DC comic book, right? You gotta have 10 subscriptions in order to follow the story. But it was kind of like that in your local government. And we were building a new police station, which was desperately needed. We had a teeny tiny one, and it was time to upgrade. And they had the RDC. The town couldn't spend $500,000 on the police station that needed to be spent because that money was tied up for this other thing. So the RDC was able to spend money on like this. The police station, but then the town gave them the $500,000 for like sewer upgrades or something, and it was this weird shell game that they had to play in order to get that money where it needed to go. And I'm not saying they did anything wrong; it was completely on the up and up. But if you're a taxpayer who doesn't know how that shell game is played, that looks really weird, right?
It seems like there should be an easier way to make it transparent.
And that's all because of the strings, right? The state's like, you can't spend this money on a new police station. And so they had to play this weird numbers game in order to get this $500,000 over there to the police station where it needed to be.
Well, and that just goes back to a lot of the red tape, and a lot of red tape is tied to the funds. And when we talk about solutions, often solutions are just removing that red tape and making it more available to be transparent so that we can make it more efficient in the long run, and we don't have to play games that the taxpayers can't understand. I believe that if we make everything for the common person to be understood, we'd see a lot more transparency, a lot more accountability, and then we would know exactly where every single funds are going. So there's a lot of red tape that just needs to be removed when we're talking about funding and when we're talking about taxes.
And then when people are outraged, they're at least outraged for the right reason. Because a lot of times what you see now is, people are upset, but they're not really sure why. Because everything just looks wrong and it feels wrong and it's not working. And if you strip all the layers away and you take all the lenses off everyone's glasses and you show them what's really going on, they either love it or they hate it, but at least they understand it. And that's where I come from on every level, and that's what I think libertarians need to do better at, is explaining like, hey, this is the real problem. This is what's actually happening behind the curtain. And then once people understand that, they better understand why we want to do the things we want to do, which is usually get government out of the way and let these things happen more efficiently, better, smoother, faster. And we can, on the few services government should be providing, we can do it better if we get all this junk out of the way, right?
Right. And you mentioned a lot about educating the public. What are some of the best ways that you've found to help the public understand? What are resources that someone looking into these issues, especially local spending, can help out or help themselves understand these issues?
Well, I mean, don't be afraid to go to a meeting. I know it can be tiresome. It can be a problem. And, one of the reasons I started live streaming, one of the reasons I gave is, my kids were in soccer and sports and they had all these. I didn't have time to go to meetings for years, right? And so having it online was super helpful. I can go to work, I can put my earbud in, I can listen to everything that's going on, and I can be caught up on what's going on in my local community. It's a lot harder to do that when you're talking about the state house because there's so much happening all the time, right? But take the time to educate yourself a little bit. People have to want the knowledge to go find it. What we should be doing is making it easy. If you want to know, here's the answer, right? And instead of making it the old-fashioned card catalog at the library, which is kind of what it is now, you got to go ask the librarian, like, where do I find this? And they're like, I don't know. It's in the 802.69. Cool, whatever that means. Go to Gateway, which is a big thing on the local level, right? Go to Gateway. Well, there's 30 different options on Gateway, and each one of those have 10 different options. What report am I looking for? It's difficult. It is. And so the more we can do, especially as elected libertarians, to make that information palatable and easy to digest, and the more educated people can be, and the more they can make better decisions based on their own values. I'm not telling them what to think. I'm just giving them the information, and they can be happy or sad about that.
Do you, as you present your solutions to the public, what are the responses that you typically get?
It's usually thanks for the info, and then they could love it or hate it. I mean, when I would post these things, I would see people in the comments saying, I think this is a great idea, and I think this is a bad idea. And sometimes they would have a question about how it's work, and I would try to go do the research and give them an answer if they asked a question, but I would try to do it in a non-partial way. It's not my job to tell people what to think. It's my job to tell them, here's the information, and here's what it means. And then they can tell me whether they like that idea or hate that idea, right? And I think as public servants, which you talk about a lot, James, and I like that you do, that's what we should be. We should be a resource for the public. It's our job to do that research and understand these things. So then it's our job to answer those questions and not blow people off with, you may go now. That's just wrong, right?
Well, anyone who's an elected official should think that they're a public servant, and their job should be to make it more accessible to the public, including their own services and the information that's going out. But when you talked about updating the system and how complicated it is even within the system, there's so much red tape to even just update the system, and technology moves so fast. I feel like the last report I saw was something like 10 years for every year when you're talking technology terms. So our government is so slow because of all that red tape and keeping up with how we could be more accessible. So we need to absolutely remove a lot of that red tape, allow the system to develop at the speed of technology, and allow voters to be more aware of what's going on, because we are public servants and we are serving them.
Well, like what I don't understand about the whole not being able to stream it, I know here in Hendricks County, every one of ours, and they've been doing it for years, they stream it. It's not necessarily been the easiest thing to find where it is, but it's out there and you can usually get to it in about 4 clicks. But on one hand, YouTube's free. Like, it didn't cost any money. At most, you buy a camera and everybody has a phone. Like, you designate one person you're already paying. Hey, I need you to sit here, just like Danny did. Hold your phone, stream it. Boom. I mean, we're not charging any money. There's no taxpayer expense on that, which doesn't make sense. Why can't we just do it?
Right. But in a lot of times it's for like our local government, especially in the local level, our government officials sometimes don't even know these things exist. They just don't. They're kind of behind the times. And, one of the reasons why I'm running next year is to try to update some of those systems, and if you're watching right now and you see a problem that's easy for you to fix, make a suggestion. Don't scream and yell. Call the clerk and say, hey, wouldn't it be easier if this FOI request was online and then I could just submit it that way, or, whatever, instead of you emailing me a form and then I got to print, if they can email, and then I got to print it out, right? And then I got to fill it out. Then I got to scan it in or take it to the office or mail it to you. I mean, these things are antiquated. And one of the things I did, because I fill out a lot of FOI requests, and there's a way you can go online and put in fillable boxes on a PDF. And I just did that one day to make it easier on myself so I can type it in and it's more legible. And then I sent them the template, hey, use this one from now on. And they're like, hey, that's awesome, thanks. And so now that's the FOI request form they send out because it's easy to fill out, right? And it's more legible for them too. And so there's little things like that that we can just do better, even as citizens. If we see something like, hey, I can fix that for you really easy, it'll take me 10 minutes, then feel free to volunteer your services to do that because I guarantee your government officials would like to know a better way to do it. They sometimes just don't know. And so they're open to suggestions from the public, especially if it's not presented in a finger wagging, angry way. You just say, hey, have you thought about doing it this way? And if you don't know how, I can show you or I can help you with that. And that's a way you can make a difference in your local community like today, right now.
Absolutely. So on the federal level, something that frustrates me about the voter, they typically only look at top level candidates. So whether that's the Senate race, which will be this year, or the president race, and then they just click the same party for the rest. But we need to be more aware in our voting. So Danny, for those who are in Mooresville, how do they find more information about you, about your race? And if they like what you're saying about accountability and transparency, what message do you have for them?
Well, I mean, I'm actually, like I said, again, I'm running next year. It's not this year. It's in the municipal year in Indiana. And Lundy for Mooresville is the website. I'm still working on it, so don't, give me a whole lot of flack for me. We're just gearing up. I've had a lot of people ask me if I'm running and ask me to run. So I have filled out the paperwork. You can make donations, which are super helpful. And as James knows, asking for money is a big part of the job. And it feels uncomfortable and weird on the inside when you ask people for money, but you got to buy things to hang on doors and all that stuff. So reach out to me on Facebook. I have a campaign Facebook page, which I think is also Lundy for Mooresville. I'm not 100% sure. If you type in Lundy and Mooresville, I come right up. So.
And on the federal side, we definitely want fiscal sanity and we want more accountability. So you can definitely look at me for the Senate race, James Seniak. You can find my website at seniacforsenate.com. And again, like Danny was saying, it does take a lot of money. We're actually traveling the state all over this week. I'll be going down to Evansville and I'll be going all the way over.
You have an insane week this week.
I do. So this is a pre-recording. We're putting this video out on Wednesday, but if you look at my full week, I'm literally all over the state.
You have a town hall scheduled. What is it? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Correct.
And they're not local either. They're not like, hey, right here in Central Indiana. It's like Evansville and somewhere way out west, right? And then there's another one the other way. So it's all over the state. As we talked about earlier, the state is charging us 74 cents a gallon. So whatever you can donate, please add 74 cents a dollar.
Danny's making my case better than I am. But the point is I'm doing the work. I'm going to these town halls. We're getting the word about a fresh modern approach to Washington, D.C. We're showing Hoosier voters that there is a more accountable and better option on your ballot. And we really want to get the word out. So we want to continue going all over the state. So please donate there. You can also find me on my Facebook. That's Seniac for Senate on Facebook. And we're really just active and ready to take this to November and fight the air responsibility on the federal level, fight what's wasteful and intrusive. And we're going to keep doing these question and answer sessions every Wednesday at 7:30. Again, some of them will be pre-recorded, but we try to get to as many live as we can because I absolutely feel that we need to be accessible to the public and we need to be able to answer the questions that directly come from you. So please look out for these videos on Wednesday nights. And Chris, as always, thank you for being part of the production of this. We couldn't do it without you. Anything going on in Hendricks County and any last words, Chris?
I think the main thing we have is this Tuesday, which obviously this is going to come out before then, is the town hall in Danville. I know we have an ice cream social coming up sometime soon. The date is lost to me right now because I had a very busy weekend. So
when's your next meeting out there, Chris? I know in Morgan County, second Tuesday of every month.
Ours is second Wednesday.
So when is the next Hendricks County meeting?
Ours will be the day this comes out. It will be over.
All right.
So second Wednesday.
Second Wednesday every month.
Second Tuesday.
Where are you meeting now?
At Brownsburg Public Library.
Brownsburg Public Library.
We outgrew our old space, so we're now having to move.
Oh, darn. You got too many people and had to move to bigger space.
It's always a bummer when that happens, but this is our last one where, fingers crossed, I might have somebody running.
Well, it's awesome that we have 3 counties represented. Again, that's second Tuesdays for Morgan County, second Wednesdays for Hendricks County, and then third Tuesdays for Johnson County. And we meet at Mashcraft in Johnson County. I attend those local meetings as much as I can, and it's often monthly. I do make it, but running a statewide race, there's going to be a few meetings I do miss. But if you want to see me there at that meeting, I'm often there.
Even in the middle of his statewide race, he was out helping his local county affiliate, talking to the local people in Johnson County this weekend. I was there with him at the Greenwood Pride event. So, you know, James is not aloof or elitist in any way. You can shake his hand and ask him any question, preferably a hard one. I like watching him get stumped. So, and then also, he's really great about answering Facebook comments and emails. So you reach out anytime. Don't hesitate. Don't feel intimidated like you would if you were contacting Todd Young. You can call James. You can shoot him an email and he'll respond.
We work to be accessible, and that's the important part. And we did have I'm really proud of my county. We did have a crazy awesome event this last Saturday for Pride, where we actually gave away a $300 gas card, because we know that Hoosiers are in need right now, and gas can always go a long way right now. So we appreciate, again, everything that we're doing it as Libertarians, all the affiliates. I appreciate the work they're putting in. And thank you again, Danny, for being a guest. Thanks, Chris, for producing. And we will be off today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on. Have a great night.